I watched the Netflix BDSM movie starring K-pop idols, so you don't have to, aka Love and Leashes. I know a lot of my subscribers are really young, so I wouldn't recommend you watch this video because I'll be talking about some adult things. Also, I am scared to record the audio for this video because I swear if my family hears me, I can kiss this YouTube thing goodbye. Now, I'm asexual, and for the most part, sexual things in movies and TV shows are the type of things I normally love to avoid. But I was really curious to see how this BDSM movie starring two well-known K-pop idols would turn out. So I did what any normal asexual person would do and watched the whole thing and took down notes so I can make a video on it. So here we are. But before we begin, for people who are not fully educated on BDSM and their whole knowledge on BDSM is based on 50 Shades of Shit, let's do a speedrun on what it actually is. So BDSM stands for bondage and discipline, domination and submission. It also includes sadism and masochism, and it involves a range of sexual practices. So in BDSM, there's usually you have a partner who is the dominant one, and you have the other partner who is submissive. And BDSM, of course, sometimes there is a dominant partner who inflicts pain on the submissive partner, and the submissive partner is really into it. And a lot of that is present in the movie. And in this movie, Seohyun is the dominant one, and Jun is the submissive one. But yeah, that is basically BDSM in a nutshell. Of course, I'm not in the community. I'm not super well versed in it. And if you are in the BDSM community, please let me know in the comment section below if this movie does do a good job of representing it or not. But yes, without further ado, let's talk about this movie in detail. So if you didn't know, the movie stars Girls' Generation's Seohyun and UKISS, who was also a member of UNB, Jun. And fun fact, they're both the mockness of their respective groups, so I think it's interesting that they're both in this movie. However, Seohyun and Jun are not babies, so yeah, it should not be that big of a deal. So when the movie began, there were no Netflix content warnings, and normally Netflix will issue a content warning if the movie will include nudity, sexual things, or violence, or anything like that. But there were none, so I was like, okay, I feel like this movie is gonna be pretty vanilla, despite, the topic at hand. So the movie begins with a narration from Soyun's character. Okay, by the way, the main characters, they are called Ji-woo and Ji-hoo, and that could get really confusing while I'm giving my commentary. So that's why, for the ease of the viewer, I am gonna be referring to them as Seohyun and Jun. Just keep that in mind. So yeah, the movie opens with a narration from Seohyun as she talks about how no relationship is perfectly equal in the world and how the power dynamic usually shifts. And I'm getting deja vu because I feel like I heard the same thing in the Kaguya-sama anime. So what happens is that Seohyun and Jun, they both meet because Jun is new in the office and he is joining as an assistant manager, and the company that the both work for, they want to work with a popular YouTuber, but Seohyun does not want to do so and is against it because the YouTuber made some homophobic comments. However, Jun kinda sides with the manager and tries to butter him up. So I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to establish what kind of characters we're dealing with. From this scene alone, we can see that Seohyun is the type of character that takes crap from no one, and it's obvious that she's gonna be the dominant one in the relationship, while as Jun, he's gonna be the submissive one because he just goes along with it and he just lets people, step on him, literally, you could say. Maybe I'm overreaching, let me know. So Seohyun and Jun, they have to get together and they have to make a list of people they want to work with in the future. And when Seohyun is at home with her mom, they have a convo, and the mom tells Seohyun that don't be the type of girl that asks a boy out, and that women should be the ones who should be submissive, and just having very outdated thoughts that these Ajumma type characters have in like movies and dramas. Seohyun, on the other hand, disagrees with the mother and argues with her mother over this. Seohyun ends up getting a package for Jun, and when Seohyun opens the package, she finds she finds a leash and a dog collar, which I saw in the trailer. And yeah, this collar, let's just say it's definitely not for a pet dog. So Jun runs and tries snatching it from Seohyun, but Seohyun already saw what's inside the package. And of course, Jun explains to Seohyun that the collar belongs to his dog and not him. The box, it falls in the most dramatic way possible. Like, how did they drop that box? I have no idea. And when the box drops, a flyer or an advertisement comes out, and the advertisement is for the largest SM adult shop in the country. And that is when Seohyun figures everything out and puts one and two together. So that's how. At first, Jun is like very nervous and scared to be around Seohyun because he's worried that she's gonna judge him really harshly because of him being into BDSM. However, Seohyun does not treat him differently, and she's like very chill and relaxed about it. Like, this is one thing I really liked about Seohyun's character, is that she's like very non-judgmental, and I feel like she's like a really strong female character. Like, not strong, but strong in the sense is that like she's pretty cool, and I really like her. So yes, and then Seohyun goes on a jog, and she has a fantasy of Jun, and she's expecting him to be the dominant one in the relationship, because I feel like, I can't speak for every woman out there, but I feel like we all expect the men in the relationship to be the tough, cool, dominant one. And one thing I really like about this movie, normally in K-dramas, the men is like the tough ones, they have the rough exterior and they're like cold and mean and whatever, and the women are like soft and sweet. But this movie is like kind of the opposite, and I really liked that. I liked that change of pace. And because Seohyun does not treat Jun differently or judges him, Jun then assumes that Seohyun is also into BDSM like him, and he straight up goes up to her and tells her to treat him as if he's her pet dog, which really surprises Seohyun. Like, she was not expecting this at all. And then at like a company dinner party, Jun starts crying because he thinks that Seohyun is looking down on him because he assumed that she was into BDSM, but she wasn't really at the time. And then Seohyun comes up and comforts Jun and lets him know that she does not look down on him and that everybody is a little bit perverted, so that's why. He then again asks Seohyun if she'll be his master, but she says no, and he doesn't like really force her or push her or whine about it, which I really liked. And I was like, okay, I really like Jun's character as well. The next day or so, Seohyun gets a little jealous when the girls in the office are interested in Jun, and that's when she starts considering, doing this thing because she also likes him. So she calls Jun to an office room and she gives him a blindfold and she tells him that she's open to trying this BDSM thing out. She locks the door and I'm like, oh boy, will this get like sexual, or like will this get like spicy now? Like, I don't know. Jun then gets a bit vulnerable when he puts on the blindfold, and he talks about how he cares a little too much about how people perceive him, and that he likes her because she isn't judgmental, and that he feels very lonely because he's into something like this and he just can't help it, and he's worried that if he's like being himself, people like judge him harshly, especially a society like South Korea. And I like really feel for him. Like, I have not gone through the exact same thing as he did, but I like feel him on caring a little too much about what other people think, and worried that people will judge you too harshly if you are like not like everybody else. Seohyun then tells Jun to stop avoiding her and that he should not feel awkward around her, and Jun's like, okay. And so far as I'm into this movie, I'm like, okay, I don't really hate this movie or anything, and it's obvious it has some good writing and the visual presentation is also there. But the thing is that I'm kind of getting bored by this movie. Like, the dialogue is good, it's not cringy or anything, or it's like not a bad movie, but it's like I'm getting bored by this movie so far. And the only reason I'm like continuing watching it is to see how this whole thing will unfold, whether it'll be like good or will it end up being trashy like 50 Shades. You know, the dialogue of this movie also did not like really resonate with me. Some parts of the dialogue, it felt like very cliched stuff you would hear from other movies. And Jun and Seohyun's chemistry, I would say it's okay. Like, the two are cute together, but it's like not the electrifying chemistry we would like want in like K-dramas and movies. And their interactions are just something that I'm not too excited about, but they're like cute together, you know, like I can vibe with it. Me not loving this movie, it's just a personal preference. I'm just not into dramas or movies that focus solely on romance and not anything else. I like stories that have, you know, plot going on, actual characters that go through like a lot of things. So this movie was a little too simple for my taste, and I feel like the only spicy thing about it was the BDSM thing, because it's not very frequently done in movies, like in Asian movies. And then Jun, he has a dream where he is kissing Soyun's feet. And listen, if he's into that, that's great, but I don't know, I just don't like the sight of feet. I don't like looking at feet, so that kind of me. But this is just a dream that Jun has. And then Seohyun gives Jun a BDSM contract, which she found online. And I'm like, Siri, play Chained Up by VIX. And yes, there is a K-pop song about that kind of thing. You should all check it out, because I love VIX. The interesting thing about this BDSM contract is that, yes, they will engage in BDSM, but they will never like actually have sex. So I found that to be interesting. The two then go to a motel, and Seohyun puts a collar around Jun's neck, and now Jun will act like Soyun's pet dog, and then he starts barking, and she even feeds him dog food, and I'm like, wow, that is some dedication. Like, he actually eats the dog food, and he like eats it from her hand in such a sensual way. I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting, you could say. Then the couple next door, it like has sex like really, really loudly, and Jun like gets really annoyed by it, and he starts loudly barking at them, and I'm like, wow, he is really committed to this act. However, the two end up leaving the motel because Jun's barking disrupts the guests at the motel. Then after a few days later, the two go for a dinner at a fancy restaurant, and he gives Seohyun a birthday present, which is red high heels. And you know how K-pop stans want their faves to step on them? Like, they say it as a joke, like, step on me. Well, it looks like Seohyun is already on it. She does step on the back of Jun, and she asks him if it hurts or not, and he's like really into it. Yeah, 45 minutes into this movie, like I am so far, and it's like very vanilla. Like, they are doing some risque things here and there, but there's no nudity or sexual thing, like not super sexual thing, not like so sexual that somebody like me who's asexual cannot handle it. So yeah, if you want a movie to be very steamy or sexual, this movie might not be for you. You might be disappointed by it, because this movie, despite being the topic of BDSM, is still wholesome. However, if you are like really young, I would not recommend you to watch this movie, because it still deals with the topic of fetishes. So yeah, I don't think children should be exposed to it, but that's just how I feel. Then at the office, Seohyun's character has to look after a new employee, and this makes Jun like really jealous. And then we have a montage of the two engaging in BDSM, and in certain scenes Jun has a gag on his mouth, and I was like, wow, I never thought the day would come where I would see a gag on a K-pop idol's mouth. And you're like, oh my god, you're making such a big deal out of it. I was like, I am sorry, I can't help it, because K-pop idols, they are presented as being so pure, innocent. So this kind of, you know, is still a shock to me, but honestly good for Jun and Seohyun for taking the risk and doing something like this. Like, props to them. I feel like many K-pop idols wouldn't be able to do something like this. And there's this other scene where Seohyun's bare foot is stepping on Jun's face. And I'm like, wow, Dan Schneider would love this movie. And then Jun tells Seohyun how, he doesn't really like the employee being under her, and it kind of makes him jealous. And so she puts duct tape around his hands and then takes out his belt and starts, like, not necessarily hitting him, but whipping it, like, around him. And they do, like, this role play of a boss, like, humiliating and degrading her employee. And since Jun is the submissive one, he's, like, into it. And Seohyun also starts to be, like, into it as well. And then it hits me that this movie is aiming to be more of a comedy rather than something very steamy. And the sad thing is that I just don't find this movie to be funny. Like, it gets a few chuckles here and there from me, but I just don't find the dialogue to be witty or funny, or any of the jokes or the funny scenarios to really land. But then again, comedy is subjective, so this is really just a personal thing. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will find this movie funny, but it's just not for me so far. She really starts liking being the dominant one in the relationship, and like she is really starting to be into it, like playing the master role, like it like really, what's the word, gives her life or something. And then there is a scene where Jun is shirtless and Seohyun is whipping him, and they cheekily censor Jun's nipples. Also, I've heard that the comic that it's based on is also pretty vanilla, like there's not actual like sex, so that could be it also. Seohyun then tells Jun that she doesn't get why he enjoys being the submissive one, why he enjoys getting hurt, and why it makes him feel alive. And from the look on Jun's face, he is kind of offended by it. Jun then gets a call from his ex-girlfriend Hana, played by Kim Bora, and no, it's not my Kim Bora, but the actress Kim Bora. Then again, my Kim Bora also acts, this Kim Bora, okay, this Kim Bora. And I like the actress, but I am so annoyed that she keeps getting typecast to play like really awful characters. And of course, that's the case in this movie as well. Then Seohyun and Jun, they go on a date, like they go on together in public, and they're like handcuffed to each other, and Seohyun tells Jun to never leave her side. The two go to a cafe and the handcuffs are still on, and I'm like, aren't they worried that they're gonna get caught any second now? Because that'd be really hard to explain. Seohyun then starts feeding Jun, and the people at the cafe, like the couples there, are jealous by it, and they're like, oh my god, why my boyfriend isn't like that? And they're like, people are like really enjoying the sight of this. However, we also get like a B plot in this scene where Seohyun's friend, female friend, who is played by this actress, I'm pretty sure you've seen her in many movies and dramas, she meets up with a guy, and she's also into BDSM, and she meets up with this guy to engage in BDSM. However, the guy like completely ignores her boundaries and like comes off really, really strong, which makes her like really uncomfortable, and seeing that made me uncomfortable. And then we go back to Seohyun and Jun, and Seohyun asks Jun if he wants to go out with her, and Jun apparently rejects the idea and says that he does not want to go out with her. And then Seohyun gets a call from her friend, and when she tries to answer it, she ends up like hitting her head under the table. And then because of that, everybody in the cafe sees that Jun and Seohyun are handcuffed to one another, and I'm like, okay, this is the first time in this movie I found myself to be thoroughly entertained. Seohyun's friend like distracts the guy that made her like really uncomfortable, and like really just, does some questionable things. And then Seohyun overhears this on the phone call, and she and Jun like rushes to save her from this creep who is probably pretending to be into BDSM to get it on with, people. but he really does not understand how BDSM works, and he's like really abusing that. And then Seohyun and Jun save her, and I thought this was pretty cool because this showed how consent is very important in BDSM, and just because you guys are engaging in something like BDSM, it does not mean that consent should not be a thing, and you should not make the other person in the relationship or partnership to uncomfortable. So I thought that was really good. I really liked that. Then we get a flashback of Jun's girlfriend, Hana, saying some really nasty things to him because he is into BDSM, and that's like the movie's way of showing how Jun does not want to get into another relationship because he is worried that his heart will be broken, and he's also worried that Seohyun will likely shame him in the future, more like Hana, for being the submissive one in the relationship, because men are expected to be dominant, but he's not like that. So that's why things start to get a bit awkward between Seohyun and Jun after Jun's rejection, and Seohyun then begins to do some research on bondage and how that works. Hana, Jun's ex, shows up to his house, and Seohyun is also on her way to Jun's house to participate in this bondage thing. Hana arrives drunk at Jun's house, and she's upset because she broke up with her boyfriend, and then Hana gaslights Jun about how he was the bad one in the relationship and he was the one who caused her all the pain and that it was all his fault. And I'm like, girl, no, please, no. Jun then stands up for himself, probably for the first time in this movie, and then Hana just starts breaking the glassware in his house, like breaking plates and stuff, and I'm like, sweetie, I promise you, Jun isn't the problem here, I swear. Then Seohyun arrives, and then the two start engaging in bondage, and then she slaps him, and that she tells Jun that she'll do it until he says the safe word, and then the two kiss for the first time in the movie. And I know a lot of people liked the kiss scene, but unfortunately it was not my thing. It was weird. It's like Jun was trying to eat Seohyun's face, and it was just not for me, I'm sorry. And then Seohyun tells Jun that she can't go through with this bondage thing, and then that's how it ends. And then this guy at the office, he finds recordings of Jun and Seohyun engaging in BDSM at their office, and I don't know why, but it gets sent to everyone in the office, like those voice recordings. The two, however, get in trouble for this, and it was honestly really heartbreaking and sad to see how everybody at the office treated them for it, and it genuinely pissed me off when during the disciplinary meeting they replayed the audio and made them relive that embarrassing thing. And the men, at the meeting, they started talking really badly to Seohyun, and it's not even criticism, more or so berating her for being into this kind of stuff, because women are, expected to be sweet, innocent, pure-minded, so they just can't fathom Seohyun, a woman, being into this kind of stuff. And the people at the office, slut-shame her behind her back and whatnot, and it's just so heartbreaking to see. And then Jun stands up for Seohyun and declares his love for her, and I'm like, yep, this is definitely a romantic comedy, but it was actually really cute. And then Seohyun exposes a clip of the men in the office being creepy, and she recorded this with a carrot pen or something like that. And I'm like, okay, this is a little too convenient, but I'm not gonna hold it against the movie for that long. And then Seohyun and Jun, they go out together, and she bites his neck like a vampire. And then the movie ends with a last scene of Jun barking like a dog and being tied up, and then the two kiss. And yeah, that's how the movie ends. Pretty standard happy ending for a romantic comedy. Overall, I feel like the movie was pretty average, for my taste at least, but it's not problematic to my knowledge, and I've seen a lot of people like it. And if you're into if you're in the BDSM community, let me know if the movie does a good or bad job of portraying it, or if it spreads any misinformation, or if it spreads the correct amount of information. Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you only watch K-dramas, don't assume that all Korean movies are vanilla, because Korean movies do tend to get very sexual and feature nudity, but I guess this one did not, likely because maybe the actors are not comfortable with it and they are well-known actors. So it'd be weird if people saw Jun or Girls' Generation's Seohyun naked, but then again, the original source material it's based on also does not have nudity or anything like actual sex in it, for all I know. But yeah, that's how the movie ends. But yeah, that was Love and Leashes. I felt like the movie did not need to be 2 hours long. It could have been an hour and 30 minutes long, and it would have been fun. But yeah, this movie, I would say out of 5, I would give it 3. Like, that's my rating. But yeah, let me know in the comment section below if you've watched it, what do you think about the movie. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye!